Good evening. Welcome to this first gathering of the year. It's before the 31st of January, so convention has it it's still okay to wish you a happy new year. As you settle in to this moment, as you get comfortable, feel what is here right now. Picking up on the energy of the new year I just referenced. And/or tuning into the reality and truth behind the sentence we've all heard in one form or another, that today is the first day of the rest of your life. Mary used to love to quote that sentence. Today is the first day of the rest of your life. Tune into what is new right now. Tune into what, before you think about it, your being, your feeling and sensing and thinking being are tuning into when you take a moment to realize this is the beginning. This is the beginning of whatever is to come. This, any moment, this is the beginning of what lies ahead. This is the beginning of who I am becoming. Where does that have your awareness go? If your mind starts thinking of things that lie ahead, if your mind starts projecting, ask it to give you some space and just stay with the realization this is the beginning. This, right now, is the beginning of whatever lies ahead. And see what that gets you in rhythm with, or what that lets you guess at, or divine, or pre-sense. Notice the sense of discovery, the eagerness, perhaps, the curiosity to discover. And let this be a sense of things just beginning that remains detached from any projection of what it is that is beginning. This isn't about things or events or versions of you. This isn't about projecting any of those. This is about feeling the energy of the part of you that knows that this right now is the formless beginning of whatever lies ahead and will one day take shape. This is the seed of what could one day take shape. This is the beginning, just the beginning. And as you notice the part that is listening out, feeling out, looking out for what's just beginning, as you feel that part of you that's reaching its fine feelers out, or is it in, towards that which is just beginning. Allow the direction of it, if any, to show itself. Is this tuning in to what's just beginning, what's fresh right now? Is that taking you out into the space that surrounds you? If so, let it. Keep following that sensation while I go do something about the radiator you may hear humming in the back. If sensing for what is new, what is fresh, what is beginning right now is taking you out into the space that surrounds you, or takes your curiosity into that sense of spaciousness, what does it feel like inside you to allow that and to make yourself at home, as it were, in that space and spaciousness? Anytime you find yourself getting lost in projections on the world down there and on projections about the future, remember, it's just about tuning in to the part of you that knows and can hold that which is just beginning now. The notion of this is just the beginning, this, and then this, and this now, this is just the beginning, something is beginning. For many of us, it is more accessible to feel that out in the space, and because the space outside of us is the world that surrounds us, it's also very close to the truth. There's a world out there that's just beginning to happen. And while you hold as much of that in your awareness, not in your mind, not in your consciousness, but in your awareness, your presence to it, turn that same curiosity inside. Feel for a moment for what's new right now inside your body. There too. This that's going on right now in a myriad cells of your body, and a gazillion interactions and communications between your cells, the vibrations of your being. That too is just the beginning of what is always becoming. Just the beginning of the rest of your life. An unending dance. As soon as you realize you've made it a concept or an image, return to feeling it, sensing it in your body. Feeling your body from within. And after a while of tuning in and listening within, again, notice what it does to your mood, to your physical composition, to the way you feel in your body, to have been tuning in for a moment, for some time, to what's just beginning, to what's altogether new within. Does it leave you refreshed? Does it leave you curious? Does it leave you with a sense of puzzlement? Does it leave you eager? Does it simply leave you feeling good in a way that you can't put your finger on? Is there any level of discomfort associated with it? Is it making you in any way concerned or restless or agitated to feel all this energy of things just beginning? And if so, if there's any source, any trace, of discomfort with it, can you stay with exactly what it feels like and what the discomfort feels like? Not why the discomfort might be justified or where it might be from, but just, can you feel? What the quality of things that are just beginning feels like inside of you, and where your sensory awareness meets that state, meets that quality, and where in the meeting of the two the discomfort arises. Can you take your sensory awareness to the discomfort? Stay with it. Take in its flavor. Often when we do simply take in what's there, and when we stay with the way it feels, the sensation itself begins to shift, and our comfort level with it does too. Very, very rarely, when you stay in embodied perception, when you stay with your sensory awareness in what's going on, does that have the ability to overwhelm you, be too much, feel foreign, because you are so present to it that on the contrary, you feel that whatever it is that's making you comfortable, uncomfortable, joyous, awake, etc., is not separate from the awareness which is holding all of those sensations, the awareness of these sensations, and what's the aliveness within those sensations is not separate. Just one of the possible exercises, just one of the ones that you can use to get a sense of third depth and what sets third depth apart from the other depths. The energy of what's just beginning, of course, takes us to a sort of timeless quality, the timeless reality that life's always spiraling, that life's always just becoming. When I was working with the graphic artists that designed my website, that had designed my website a few months before, I spoke to them about the depths. They were not themselves familiar with Jitsu, and they came up with very simple, I find, and beautiful graphics that translate many of the qualities I had talked to them about. So I was talking to complete neophytes to Jitsu, people who are professionals in the graphic arts, and we were on a Zoom call because they're in France, and I said, let me record this, and then you can go back to it. So I did maybe a half hour going through the depths, and what you see here in this picture is of course that spiral, and they had given it a more solid contour, and I asked them to soften that. So is it a movement out that you are seeing? Is it a movement inward that you are seeing? Is it both at the same time? Well, when you get a sense of, this is the beginning, this is just the beginning. This is just the beginning of the rest of my life. This is just a new chapter beginning, and another, and another, and another, and another. It frees you. It has you spiral out into the realm of possibility. It has you spiral out of the concern and the worry of the future. This would be going to be the eternal continuation of the things you've been disliking about life for decades, with some hope that it might also be the continuation of things you've been liking about the world. But so to not spiral into that, oh my God, this is the same over and over again, only it's getting worse. Or the, oh, we must spiral out of the here and now and imagine something completely different. It's neither taking off to not be here, nor is it burying ourselves in the horrific projection that the future may hold nothing new, only the same old, except warmed over and worsened. It spirals you out into, but what's here now? What's just beginning? Listen, remain curious, stay alive, be here now, be available to this now. Know that, yes, you are made of the past. There's no denying that. I am the result, the sum total of everything that's gone before this moment, so that I may experience, so that I may be the vessel to the realization that right now something unheard of is beginning. Something unprecedented, an overused word in American media, especially over the last years, but yes. In French, something unprecedented, one of the ways that you would colloquially term that one, well, colloquially, it's it's very proper language, but it is commonly used, would be to say c'est inédit. Inédit, éditer is the same word as edit, but it doesn't mean the exact same thing. It means to publish. An éditeur is not an editor. An éditeur, almost the same word, same spelling, is a publisher, right? So inédit is it has not yet been given out. It has not yet been issued. It has not yet been published. It's not been put out there before. So that's, you know, something unexpected. Ah, c'est inédit. We've never had this before. It has not yet been given out. Yeah, to edit. So to like speak out, give out. It's not been out there yet. And so rather than fleeing into things that are way out there, we can be in touch with a part of ourselves that is just beginning the output of something new that has never been put out before. Being in touch with that brings us in touch with the energetic quality and approach to life that made Martin Luther famously say, you know, the German reformer, founder of the Lutheran Church over 500 years ago, if I knew, he said, that the world was ending tomorrow, I would plant an apple tree today. It's not that he hated apples and the only way he would plant an apple tree if he knew that tomorrow the world was going to end anyway, obviously. Rather, the meaning of that quote is, I'd still plant new things. If it were the end tomorrow, and whoever knows what will end when, but I'd perform an act of planting. You know, I would bring something into the world that has a future and a life to gain and growth to go through. That's the power of that essential energetic quality that we call third depth. So ether is the old name for that element, the one Mary used most. She also called it the binder, the key element, etc., and quintessence, which, as you've read in the announcements, both for our gathering this evening and in the newsletters that I send out, if you're not on my email list, you can sign up for that at the end of this livecast. But as I've mentioned both in the announcement for this evening and in the newsletter, the most recent ones that I sent out, quintessence really just means fifth essence, and it hints at the fact that something that is very, very essential, quintessential as we say in English, is kind of hard to name solidly. And yet, so once you are in contact with, things are always just beginning, things are always just beginning, things are always new. Yes, we like to see the structure that they have and the lasting effect that they give, etc., etc., etc. We call that earth. Yes, we like to connect and interact to what there is and what's evolved over time, and we call that, symbolize that with air and call it second depth. And yes, we're always looking for ways and paths that we can take and follow, and we call that water and flow and fourth depth. And yes, we're always seeking to be validated and validate ourselves, who we are and have become. But underlying that is a sense of, and who knows what this is the beginning of. So I've sort of anticipated my answers to some of the questions that I have received for this evening. Thank you for being here for this gathering, and let me get to the first of the questions. Karen writes, Dear Matthias, it's been a while since I've touched in for your webinars, and very good wish for 2024 still. I have two questions. My first question is related to the site located 2 fingers breadth below the navel, above the navel, excuse me, it says above, and above the belly button, 2 fingers width above the belly button is where in the self-help main central flow, Mary has us hold one of the steps. Now, those of you who were fortunate enough to attend a workshop with Mary would have learned 8 steps. Those of you who received their self-help book 1 from a practitioner who was steeped in Mary's teachings would probably have had your practitioner tell you to add 2 additional steps to the self-help book, which only contains 6. And what Karen is referring to here is one of the 2 very important steps that Mary included in Self-Help Main Central, always taught them, always explained them, which is what Karen will be asking about, always explained them in a way that once you had heard her explanations, you would not want to ever skip them again. And yet, for some reason, in the Self-Help book, she only has 6 steps. So, right hand at the top of the head, left hand on forehead, tip of nose, and then the cleft above the breastbone. That's not in the book. Then on the breastbone, 1/3 of the way down, then at the bottom of the sternum, and then 2 fingers above the navel. That's the second of the 2 steps that's not in the book. Then comes the pubic bone with the left hand, and then the right goes to the coccyx. So that is a step Mary always and invariably taught. This site does not, Karen continues, it seems to me, have a clear correspondence to one of the 26 safety energy locks. Instead, I've heard a Jinshin Jitsu practitioner related to the hara, which is, however, generally described as located below the navel. Perhaps they were speaking in general terms, referring to the entire lower abdominal area. I find the site extremely comforting and nurturing to hold, and wouldn't want to miss it, though I'm aware some versions of the main central leave it out. Can you say a little more about this location and what it evokes and relates to for you? Well, let me start right by what Mary said about this step and this one. When she taught the Self-Help Main Central, which she did in each of the 5-day classes that I attended, she made a drawing of a human silhouette, and she would give us, most often she'd give us musical notes that go with each of the steps, which was funny. Because she never explained about the musical notes, she just gave it to us and said, those of you who are interested in music can study it. But for me, you know, who had played a recorder as a child, very, very simple flute, the fact that it starts with a C on the pubic bone, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then high C is above the head. And yes, I skipped the tip of the nose. The tip of the nose was B flat, which to people who know the order of notes on a scale makes no sense, because B flat is between B and C, and not between A and B. But as I said, Mary was no expert in music by any stretch of the imagination. And as far as I know, she'd gotten this information from someone else, someone like Manly Hall or Paul Foster Case. She studied the work of both of those men to a certain level, and some of her references to music and tonalities with zodiac signs and colors, there's another question coming about that, actually come from that background. No explanation ever given, but repeatedly the sentence, and those of you who know about these things can research that further. So, to me, the fact that she gave us the notes just simply hinted at the fact that it's a very complete scale from some area above the head, which she didn't have us hold. She just mentioned, this is the high C, this is the repetition of what happens at the pubic bone in the octave above. But the simple fact that she placed these notes on the 8 steps of the main central flow gave me a sense that, aha, so they have a harmonic completeness when there's 8 of them, not 6. But then she mostly explained how each of these steps of the main central flow relates to an endocrine gland, or a number of them. So the first combination relates to thalamus, hypothalamus, pituitary and pineal gland. And the pituitary gland and the pineal gland are, of course, the master glands of the endocrine system, those very, very important glands that are responsible for our hormone system. Second step has to do with the energy for reproductive functions, the gonads, meaning testicles or ovaries, the gonads, and their important hormonal production. Then here, the thyroid and parathyroids. So I really don't need to say anything more for you to say, oops, yeah, that's another step I don't want to skip. Thyroid, parathyroids, and everything they deal with on a physical, emotional, and energetic level. Thymus gland on the sternum, on the breastbone. Here in the pit of the stomach, it's the solar plexus. There's no endocrine gland here, but it's the opening of the solar plexus that we affect with this. And now comes the area that you're asking about, Karen. 2 fingers above the navel relates directly to the adrenal glands. And no sooner have I said adrenal and invite you to rethink what you wrote about a relationship to the safety energy locks, and I bet you have it. There is a direct, and I feel a very, very direct relationship between this spot at the front, 2 fingers above the navel, and the central 23 and safety energy locks 23. So here, of course, we are not on a safety energy lock, but we're between the 20s. And here we're between the 21s, between the 22s, between the 13s, between the 14s. In a sense, we are between the 23s, and that is what I feel. Just like you, I find that extremely comforting and soothing, that area. It really helps me come down in the way that we come down when, well, the magic switch from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system happens, and when the different tones of the vagus nerve, the different vagal systems start regulating. So it is hugely important, and it does have a connection to 23. So is it the hara? No, it really isn't. The hara is a full hand's width beneath the umbilicus, so it's quite a distance. However, you could also say, yeah, certainly what this regulates as it resonates with 23, and it clearly resonates with 23. And any of you who haven't thought about it in the past and have practiced this flow a lot, next time you practice it, simply let the fingers of your left hand listen through your body from the front to the back. Simply feel the kidneys and adrenals relaxing, resting, calming down. It's clear. It couldn't be clearer. However, that switch then into a more regulated way of being does have a lot to do with what the reputation of the hara is. So when I trained as a Lujong instructor, Lujong is a Tibetan healing yoga. It's a Tibetan yoga that's thousands of years old and taught today mostly by Turku Lobsang Rinpoche, who lives in Vienna, Austria, but teaches in different countries. I found out that certain branches of Tibetan Buddhism can go as far as to reduce all chakras that we know from the Indian system to just 2 chakras, the heart chakra and then the umbilical chakra. And the heart chakra would then sum up what is commonly called heart chakra plus the throat chakra plus the third eye. So all of these 3 are sort of condensed into heaven, as we would say in Shinjitsu, being the sum of these three. These three clearly have a lot to do with one another. And then the navel chakra has to do with the root chakra and what's commonly called the umbilical or navel chakra and the solar plexus. So, you know, what gets you grounded in earth, in the body, in substance, in matter, in physical existence, and what keeps you centered in your heart and your connection to the non-physical world, etc., etc. What keeps you centered in your emotions and sensations and thinking. It could be these two could be looked at as just two worlds, and if you go that general, then yes, you know, connecting this with a hara makes some level of sense. But I never ever once heard Mary comment on the hara, although it is obviously a Japanese word and concept. That's not what she went into. It was certainly something she was aware of, not something I ever heard her include in her discussion of the main central flow. Very good question, very interesting one. Oh, and then the next one I've partly broached. My other question is about safety energy locks and colors. I am aware that correspondences between each safety energy lock and specific colors, or for some safety energy locks, all colors, exist. While this information is offered in some training materials, I haven't experienced this as a very integral part of my practice. All this makes me curious if there's more information on how these correspondences were originally established, how did they come about, and what might your take on these correspondences be? Is this something you bring into your sessions, and are there ways we might do so more? Well, I think I've answered the question how it got into the discussion of Jinshinjutsu. Whether Paul Foster Case or Manly Hall, I don't know, but that's easy to research. These are authors I have not personally read. I've just heard it referenced several times that she did study them, and I've heard and actually read, but in a private book that somebody compiled who's a long-time student of Jinshinjutsu and a long-time student of Mary's and a long-time student of astrology and many other things. She actually, I did see it in her private writing, which of the sources it was. She studied both Manly Hall and Paul Foster Case, and the references were given. So have I pursued it? As you can tell from the kind of answer I'm giving, I absolutely have not, because I took her invitation to those of us who know more about this, or those of us who are interested in this, to pursue it. Of course, an invitation if I were such a person to pursue it, but also the full license to leave it aside if I was not so inclined. So I have pursued the areas she touched upon that were meaningful to me and have sought how they fit in. You know, my class about the magic flute, which, by the way, I'm teaching again this year for the first time in quite a few years. It's a class I've only taught in German and once in Dutch, but it's fun to play with the tonalities that the different arias and choruses of the magic flute are composed in, and see what organ function energy they relate to in Jinshinjutsu. It's such fun. It's just playful, though. It's not to say, when you do the heart flow, you must also, but it's even better if you put on music in C minor or something, or is it F minor? I don't take my word for it. I'm not sure right now which one it is. Nothing Mary taught ever came across that linear, that, so bear that in mind and you must do this. Some people, I think, have played with colored lights on safety energy locks. that's a personal calling and not a mental obsession with the idea that doing even more and including even more approaches is even better. If it's simply based on, well, you know, follow your passion, work with what you resonate with, then it can be very, very enriching. So that's why until now I've not pursued the color information. It's made no difference in my practice at all. And that's just my journey, you know. So unless you feel a particular calling because colors really interest you and how you vibrate with colors really makes you curious, that would be a good reason to pursue it. But simply because you haven't yet added that into your practice, well, if it's not particularly calling you, I wouldn't worry about it, quite frankly. It's just that Mary was always saying worlds within worlds within worlds, you know. It's funny where human minds go with these things. We can either go in this direction of thinking what she means is, oh, and there's much more. There's so much more for you to study and discover and get really serious about. There's more. It's not just this information you already understand. There's much, much more you must study. You know, and then it becomes, we think we're growing, but we're narrowing. Or you can hear it as, you know, it really doesn't matter where you look, as long as you look where your passion and your abilities and sensibilities take you. Yeah, where your passion, your abilities and sensibilities, your affinities, your resonance take you. There, if you can stay there, if you can stay in perception, the simple truths of what it means to be alive and what it takes to become more alive can be found. So to me it's that generous blink of the eye, that generous hinting at, you know, I'm expressing it through the words that I have, given who I am. But you guys out there, don't you hesitate to investigate other fields. There's so much. There are so many other looking glasses through which you could find the same truth. That's what I hear Mary saying when she includes information without any further explanation and without any claim that she has further understanding and without any suggestion that it has meaning beyond the fun that individual students and practitioners may have with it. She was always inviting us to be the fun, and yep, that's, to me, the very innocent way in which and reason for which she included these kinds of things. Right, okay, so I'm off on this track again of giving myself all the time in the world because I didn't have that many questions. But it's coming up on 1/4 So thank you, Karen, for your question. I hope this is helpful for you to either follow your passion for colors if you have one, or feel free to keep working with what talks to you. And I know that's a lot. There's a lot out there in Shinjitsu that talks to you. As always, many thanks for offering this opportunity to ask for your perspective, and warmest wishes. Karen, warmest wishes back to you. Taj. Hello, Matthias. I was noticing this month how many moments surprised me. Literally a gasp. Oh, look at that evening light on the mountains. Wow. Look at the sculpture of the leafless the leafless tree cuts into the sky behind. Amazing, the color the rising sun gives to those clouds. And yes, an openness to sense everything new, even the presence of a temperature inversion. All invite me to pause and revel in a feeling of awe for the flow of life. As I'm re-listening to this lesson in preparation for this A&Q, I now realize I can name these experiences as having a third depth quality. Nice. especially befitting to acknowledge these occurrences as a quality of experience which I would miss if it weren't there. Yes. You know, this of course refers to the title, The Life We Miss, where my claim about each of the depth qualities is that it's nice to know that third depth is liver and gallbladder, and when you're very angry or given to anger, prone to anger, third depth might help you out of that predicament, but that is such a limited understanding of what it is. And third depth, the part of you that knows that life is always fresh, when you no longer meet life with that sense, oh, you miss it. You miss it because you know it. It's so deeply inscribed in your aliveness and mine, in the human aliveness, that life is supposed to feel fresh. Our spirits know that, and the cells in our body know that. And unless we separate from the cells of our body, from the forever freshness of the flesh, because we have heard that the flesh is foul and it's what gets us attached to this planet, oh no, and its pleasures, oh dear, and it's unspiritual, oh no, you know, unless we disconnect from our precious body in that way, we cannot help but feel that every cell of our body is literally fueled by the understanding of becoming. Something is just becoming. Something is just becoming. Something is just greening. Something is just being renewed. That's third depth. That's quintessence. That's the motor of aliveness. And yes, when life no longer feels that fresh to you, boy, do you miss it. Boy, do you miss it. And so Jinshin Jitsu, not as a tool to help me through the yucky moments when I'm so mad at life or so frustrated with it or something, but as a validation of the fact that the deepest part of me remembers what it's like when life feels fresh at all times. And therefore, once it remembers that actively, wants to go back there and keep going back there. Oh, look at the way the rising sun colors those clouds. Oh, look at the sculpture, the barren tree cuts it, or the leafless tree cuts into the clouds, or the sky behind it. You know, the freshness, the amazement of it all. That's the youthfulness, that's the eternal youth, the eternal spring that third depth brings into our lives. But I'm getting carried away, aren't I? Which is third depth, by the way, getting carried away with just how joyously alive everything is. I'm wondering if you would speak more, again, on how the third depth is the fuel or basis for the four other depths. Well, see, I've already incorporated an approach to the answer to that question into my earlier remarks, as you probably noticed, Taj. It isn't so much that it is the, you don't say root here, fuel, yes, in a sense, basis. Not exactly. What I'm saying is it shows up in the other depths. In a sense, it fuels them, but it's more the fuel for the process of physical becoming. The process of physical becoming, the order of manifestation, right? The manifesting level. After Taj's questions and remarks, there's a question that Sandy sent, and then asked me to just forget and never mind because she'd listened to the lesson again and understood. But I'll read the question anyway because I think it's very valuable, especially for me to answer for those who are not in the course. So, and that question actually relates to third depth quality being the motor for the order of manifestation, for the coming into existence of organ function energy. But here, on a more basic, who are the depths? How is the third depth central to the others level? I find it easiest to, again, go through what first and second and fourth and fifth depths are, and then infuse each of them with a good shot of, you know, as in mixing a cocktail, third depth. So, first depth, structure, earth, feeling held, making a home, being at home in the moment. Yeah? If structure is so that I can be reasonably sure that things aren't going to change anymore. You know, I'm on time and I hate it when people are not. This is structure. Structure is important. I have set limits. It's very important to have boundaries. I want you to hear and respect my boundaries. Now, while there's something understandable and legitimate in what you've just heard me say, you know, expound about structures, that punctuality is a matter of respect and that boundaries ought to be announced and clearly stated and then clearly respected, it's so dramatic. The tone of what I'm bringing across to you isn't pleasant. It doesn't make your heart sing. It doesn't give you the benefit of why structures are delicious. Structures are delicious when, hey, when we keep our discussion to the kind of time we had allotted for it, we feel motivated to get on with what we're talking about. We feel fresh when we leave the conversation. We all feel respected when we know we are free from this thing that we have gathered for once the time is up, etc. So the structure has a sense, it has a life-enhancing, look what's growing thanks to the structure kind of sense. So that is first depth with a heavy dash of third depth. Ah, look at this, you know. Second depth, taking the world in, taking you in, relating deeply to you, giving myself to the world, giving myself to you, committing, binding, connecting, allowing the world to happen inside of me. But if my binding, my connecting to you and the world feels like I'm always tied down by obligations to other people, by expectations from other people. Oh, I'm taking these things in from the world out there, but then all that junk stays inside of me, or it's so much work to try and metabolize it. Then I have lost the dash of third depth that would make me understand why I would want to relate to people and the world, people and things in the world, why I would want to give myself to the world, because it enlivens me, it makes me come alive, it makes me become new. If I let what I hear from you, sense from you, feel from you, hear from that music, if I let that come inside rather than just be, oh, nice, nice, I like that playlist, nice. But it's out there. It's only nice as long as it's out there. I'm not getting the benefit of letting something fully in and I feel myself come more alive with it. That's third depth. Second depth conjugated to the order of third depth, if you will. And I could say the same for fourth depth. You know, it is seeking paths and finding paths and showing paths and saying that way. But if that rigidifies into saying, I told you it's that way, then the aliveness is gone. You know, the aliveness of, it is worth looking for ways and seeking ways and going deeper and going higher and taking corners and what seemed to be detours in the beginning, because there's new life to be found there. There's new life to be found as I deepen my paths and heighten my awareness and take an unexpected turn, etc. As more aliveness, third depth, to be gained from those ways of seeking and finding and showing and indicating pathways. So, third depth. Quality that gives sense, that gives meaning, that gives something life-furthering to the fourth depth quality. And then finally, fifth, it's great to be radiantly me and affirm that I have every right to be who I am. And you easily realize now that if I do that with a sense of, see, all life is always just becoming, and because it's all just becoming, what it has this far become is well worth and deserving of being seen and shown. You know, it's like, so it isn't I'm showing off to be admired and to be immortalized as this, but you know, it's because as I show my aliveness at the form it's taken right now and the point it's gotten to right now, it encourages you to do the same, etc. So that's my elaboration for this evening on how central third depth is to the other ones, in the sense that it is. So in that sense, you might say it's the fuel, right? It shows up in them. It shows up in them. It's a vital ingredient to them. It's an activator for them. It's a sense giver for them. It's what gives them meaning, living meaning, aliveness, joy, sense, beauty. How its presence allows the essence of the other four to come alive, perhaps as a review and preview. So yeah, that was the review, that was the preview, and how the presence of third depth allows the essence of the other four to come alive, I think, is exactly what I just went into. This comes from my understanding in yogic science about the element akasha, sometimes translated as ether. Yeah, and ether, when it was still a concept in physics, and it's not entirely dead. There are still physicists today who think there may be the thing that was formerly called ether in physics. Ether was indeed not thought of something that's not there, but what's holding everything together, which is what akasha in the ancient Vedic sciences apparently also is, and also means. You know, it wasn't until physics decided that light sometimes, or the model was developed that life sometimes behaves like a wave and sometimes like a particle, that physicists finally thought they could dispense with ether as the notion of a substance that allows that holds things together, that fills space, and that allows light to travel, because if light is a wave, well, a wave only can travel through matter. It can't travel through empty space. A particle can fly through empty space. So once they came up with this description that light sometimes acts like a wave moving particles, and sometimes it acts like a particle capable of moving through space, that they did away with the need for a glue that holds the universe, the physical universe, together. But some physicists still today are wondering whether they might end up discovering some subtle substance that's holding the world together. So we'll all keep watching what comes up there. How fascinating, however, that a science that's thousands of years old had already developed that model, and I'll continue reading what Taj is sharing with us. Akasha is said to be the source of the other elements, S-O-U-R-C-E, the source, not the source, S-A-U, yeah, the source. The mother element, the ground on which the other four elements play. I described it as the playfulness that unfolds within each of the other four elements, but calling it the ground on which, or the ground from which, the basic aliveness, the foundational aliveness from which each of the other four depths dance, one might say. As an element, it is still physical, although very subtle. Yogic science goes on further to say that it is also that which holds us and everything together. That's what physics said for the longest time. And that someday modern science will come to realize that akasha is the source of gravity. As in, Isaac Newton noted that the apple fell down, but he failed to make mention that the tree was growing up. Ha ha. The ha ha is in the text. So, when gravity was explained to me in high school, of course, in the beginning, we heard about Newton's experiment and the apple falling down, and that, of course, is an easy thing to play with children any age. But later, and that was actually a concept I had to wrap my head around, it was made clear to us that gravity is actually a force of attraction. So, of course, we think about, well, certain things just are heavy, that's why they fall. Things that are not so heavy, don't fall as quickly, and might even float. So it's the heaviness of the object, but later I was taught, of course, that masses attract each other. And if the Earth were any bigger than it is, then the force of gravity, if it had more mass, if the planet Earth had more mass, force of gravity would be stronger here, as it is on planets that are bigger than our own, etc., etc. So the power of attraction, the physical force of attraction, is what gravity is. And a response, of course, to gravity, which is such a wonderful initiation into physical reality, you know, feeling the reliability of the force of gravity is, I think, extremely soothing to our minds, because it's very, very reliable. And so, you know, later when we tell ourselves the story that being in physical matter makes us heavy, etc., that's later, that's further down the line. As young children, we start learning about how to become upright, how to move away from the Earth. But first we learn that the Earth reliably carries us, and then we don't feel put upon by the fact that we have to do this work all the time of standing up while gravity is trying to pull us down. Our childlike experience is, because gravity is so clearly telling us where down is, we so clearly know where up is, and so we play with that. It's just the mind that finds that complicated or burdensome. Physical reality, children don't. As you watch playing children, you watch them fall down, you watch them get up. They don't find it tedious to get up 100 times in a row. They just don't. Right. As I type, I'm reminded of the is word. Oh dear, I was talking about time and how nice it is to respect the framework of time. It's 2 minutes after 9. The is word, that it's not that the third depth is ether, rather that it's just an analogy to understand third depth better. Or is it? Perhaps a pointing to the quality of life that infuses everything. So maybe in your elaboration, something about the moreness of energetic quality of third depth over just being ether. Okay, so I think I've handled the topic of the moreness of third depth. What third depth is more than just ether and more than the other physical elements. Let me just clarify why I so often say that the word is trips us up. It's not that it's altogether wrong to say that third depth is ether. It's just that once we say is, we think that means equates. Yeah? When I say Sue is a mother, most of the time people are fully aware of the fact that she is absolutely certainly also a daughter, that she may already be or one day be a grandmother, that she is probably a colleague and certainly a neighbor and possibly a spouse or a partner or a lover or a movie enthusiast, etc., etc. So when we say Susan is a mother, that doesn't seem to limit our ability to conceive of Susan as many things as much as in the context of Jinshin Jitsu, third depth is green tends to limit us. So then everything green is third depth. No, sometimes it's just a t-shirt, you know, and everything third depth has to be green. And I mean, so I'm actually not having an argument about whether the sentence third depth is ether is correct or not. I am often finding myself pointing out how these short sentences trip us up when we don't keep our mind broad and open enough about what it is we're saying. Ether is a symbol. Ether, none of us know what it is. So to say third depth is ether trips us up already in the sense that, well, since we don't know what ether is, we can say, much as we don't know what exactly ether is, it's hard to say what exactly third depth is. However, here are the parallels, right? So it's a constant invitation. I know it can be annoying to a mind that likes boxes neatly packed and shut, but it's a constant invitation to keep thinking more broadly and listening more deeply. That's all the beef I have with the word is. Thank you, Taj, for the very deep and insightful questions. And so Sandy's question, because I said I'd get to it, you know, please disregard my question, she offers in a later email, but in the original one, she asks me, and as I'm listening to you speak of the green aliveness of third depth, I'm reminded of how you speak of lung and its aliveness that goes out into the world. So, you know, Sandy's been in the study circle for a long time and is referring to the organ flow 15-month journey. I hear you speak of ether. It is not manifest. Does the green aliveness nourish or give rise to the aliveness of the lung? Do they need each other? And that's what I hinted at earlier in this evening's discussion, that yeah, without the quality of everything you have now taken on board about third depth, the very desire, the very wish, the very fire, the very energy, the very stamina, the very enthusiasm, the very punch to go and manifest a life, to go and inhabit and keep building and rebuilding a body would not be there. It wouldn't be there without a third depth that is strong on the unmanifest level. The energy required for all the work of manifesting a body and a personality in the body and an active human being inhabiting body and personality, the juice, the tremendous amount of organized and joyous and exuberant life energy required for that would not be there. So they absolutely need each other. Thank you all for being here this evening and staying ever so slightly over time with me. Those who want to find out more and sign up for my newsletter can do that right here. I will see the members of the Life We Miss and the Online Study Circle on our live Zoom call for members only next week, next Wednesday, but you'll all be receiving an email reminder about that. For the others, I will see you next month in our gathering and Q&A.